The honourable member for Flinders.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. Mr Deputy Speaker, on October the 12th, 2007, I stood in the courtyard in Bali of the Australian compound, and I had the task of representing the Australian government at the 5th anniversary commemoration of the 88 Australians who lost their lives in the Bali bombing of October the 12th, 2002. On that day I met brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, sons and daughters of those who had been lost in Bali on October the 12th, 2002. Their loss was profound, and as had been put to me, 5 years was both the longest time and the shortest of times. And the additional 3 years that have bridged the gap since then would also feel as if it were both the longest time and the shortest time. These losses were the human face, the Australians who have had loved ones ripped from them, who represent the cost, the tragedy and the task we face in an ongoing moment of great global challenge. We step back a year further to September the 11th, 2001, the genesis of what we face today. It was a defining moment in global history during the course of the last 2 centuries. It was the moment when the notion of security switched most tangibly from the classic power confrontations which had been in place during the First World War and the Second World War, and in particular during the Cold War, to asymmetric threats from terrorist groups and in particular from an extremist sect within the Islamic world. That moment changed our task, our role and our lives, and by now I would have expected that we had faced worse challenges and worse outcomes, and we have had Bali and London and Madrid. But the horrors of September the 11th have not been followed by the level of violence against our societies that might have been expected. And the reason why is because there has been a profound and concerted and widespread international effort to confront the causes, the leaders and the carriage of those acts which would destabilise not just our society but the Islamic world itself at its core. I also note, Mr Deputy Speaker, that in addition to the 88 Australians and the more than 100 Australians lost more generally as a consequence of the terrorism which followed from September the 11th, 2001, 21 beautiful young Australians have given up their lives in the pursuit of achieving a lasting solution and peace and security for the people of Afghanistan and more generally for the people of the broader world. So I say there are no free passes for anybody. The price that has been paid is profound and real and tragic, and the echoes of those losses will pass through generations in Australia. I know in my own family, a great uncle was lost during the First World War, Colin Alexander Grant, on the Western Front, and his parents and my grandfather and my mother never lost the impact over the course of 50 years of that tragedy for their family. And for the families today, these losses will last throughout their lives, and we offer our profound sympathy and our most profound thank you for the courage and the commitment of your sons, your brothers, or your fathers, or your husbands. Mr. Deputy Speaker, what then is the global threat which we face? Because I want to put this challenge into its grandest context. The goal of the Wahhabist movement, which developed most profoundly in Egypt in the post-war period, is nothing less than an Islamic caliphate. It is a 100-year goal. It is a fantasist's objective, but it is nevertheless a real and abiding motivation for those at the heart of the Wahhabist movement who seek to distort and pervert an otherwise beautiful faith. They seek a global world under Islamic rule of its most extreme and barbaric form, as was evident under the Taliban. And they are patient. The 30-year objective, the generational objective, is to establish a beachhead in one of the great Islamic states of the world. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Indonesia, all of these are part of the push towards a long-term caliphate. And the goal is to destabilise and to fragment these countries and ultimately to secure control. I do not believe that the movement will be successful in any of these countries, but it was successful in one place. It was successful in Afghanistan, and we should never lose sight of the fact that the Wahhabist movement, driven through the agency of Al-Qaeda and manifested in the form of the Taliban, did assume control of one of the poorest countries of the world, and from that country alone was able to carry out and lead the attacks of September the 11th, to train the architects such as Hambali of the Bali bombings, and to contribute through the network of Al-Qaeda and its affiliates to London, to Madrid, and to the numerous attacks throughout the Islamic world. The immediate task, the immediate objective, is to fragment and to destabilise an Egypt, a Saudi Arabia, an Indonesia, or in particular a Pakistan, and therefore to assume control of a more powerful state, and therefore to have a stronger base as part of a longer global objective. And however wild that idea may seem to us, it is real and it has profound consequences for security in a world where asymmetric capabilities are able to lead to catastrophic consequences. That also brings me to the issue of the great security threat which is abiding and with us today, of the dirty bomb. The dirty bomb is the risk that we all face, and it will be with us throughout our lives. So long as there are nuclear weapons in the hands of states which are at risk of fragmentation, then the nightmare possibility remains of a perversion of some of those materials and a conversion to a dirty bomb and the detonation in one of our cities. This is not fantasist material. I remember in 2002 and 2003 warning of future attacks on UK cities, of Spanish cities, and sadly these attacks came to pass in almost identical form to that which was proposed, or that of which warnings were given. And I believe today that that same threat remains tangible, real and germane. That is why there is a profound and abiding security task we face. So our task in Afghanistan has been and remains twofold. Firstly, to guarantee that Afghanistan is not a safe haven, and I agree with the words of the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition on this, and indeed have proposed such terms for a great period now. It cannot be a safe haven now, and it cannot be a safe haven in the future for Al-Qaeda or its governmental manifestation, the Taliban. Secondly, we must ensure that Afghanistan is not allowed to become a wedge into regional security and thus to lead to the fragmentation of Pakistan or the destruction of democratic rule there. That can occur either through the complete breakdown of order and security in Afghanistan or through the mass flow of population across the border. Both of those risks are profound. So that remains our task. That remains our purpose. And coupled with that is the high human objective of doing all that we can to secure and advance human rights within Afghanistan itself. This is a noble and real and profound task, and one which the West has taken upon itself on many occasions over the course of the last 60 years, with great cost to itself, but with a genuine and elevated sense of common humanity and purpose. But it is never easy, and there are always costs of action and costs of inaction. In this case, we believe that the costs of inaction are greater. This brings me to the issue of progress. And progress is about both success and an honest accounting of failure. The progress we have seen in Afghanistan is real. We have 1,550 Australian troops in Uruzgan. We are helping to train the 4th Brigade of the Afghan National Army. We are part of 120,000 international troops on the way to 140,000, and of 20,000 local recruits in training at any one time, arising to about 134,000 local soldiers and 109,000 police. So real security progress is underway. But I would note that we have also seen educational and health progress. In particular, we have gone from 1 million students in school in 2001 to 6 million today, and 2 million girls in school compared with none in 2001. This was a society which was based not just on some form of inequality between genders, but on a brutal repression of the females and a brutal repression of educational opportunities for women in Afghanistan. There is much to be done there, but that development is real and profound and significant. The honest side of the accounting, though, must call us to say that there have been significant failures. The democratisation process has advanced in fits and starts, and there are real questions over much of the conduct of the recent election. Secondly, there is clearly endemic corruption in much of the government and in much of the society. That corruption must be rooted out, and the Karzai government has failed to take the steps necessary to ensure that the corruption disappears. So we must never be apologists for what is occurring there. Real progress, but deep failures to date. This then brings me to where should we go from here. And I am deeply cognizant, Mr. Deputy Speaker, of those 21 families who have lost sons, fathers, brothers and husbands in Afghanistan. We have 3 options. We can withdraw straight up, but that will create a vacuum in Afghanistan with a profound and tragic set of human consequences. There will be bloodshed, there will be the eradication of opportunities for young women and girls, and there will also be a great security vacuum which will see destabilisation in Pakistan. That is a consequence of nightmarish proportions, and one which should send shudders down anybody who looks at the great global challenge of security. Because if Afghanistan falls, then there will be profound issues for security in Pakistan, and there can be no question of that. The second option is the endless blank cheque, which is simply unacceptable. Along with many in this House, I believe there must be a third way, which is conditionality, and that is a progressive drawdown once security has been attained in return for greater development of democratic participation. We must seek to hive off and to shatter those elements of the insurgents who will never be accommodated, and those who can be part of a democratic future, much as has occurred in Northern Ireland and Bougainville. So I am realistic about the future, but optimistic about the potential, and resolve in our commitment. We have a great challenge, Mr Deputy Speaker. It is one which the world must meet, and I commend the motion and the support for Australia's engagement in Afghanistan.